Hello and welcome to the CT Cloud podcast. This is episode 4. I'm your host, Kade Herbert. With us today, we have CallTower CRO William Rubio. And our topic today is Microsoft Teams voice design and how that can differ from company to company and from Microsoft itself. And we're going to dig into kind of the benefits versus the risks and costs of all of that. Specifically, we're going to talk a little bit about CallTower's Teams direct routing design and how it compares. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to William so he can dig into these voice designs. Now, there's kind of 4 voice designs that you've outlined here, William. Do you want to walk us through them real quick?
Sure, I do. And it's an interesting conversation because obviously with Microsoft Teams or voice with Microsoft Teams, I should say, getting such publicity lately because of the fact that you have a lot of customers moving over to it. Going from 20 million users on Microsoft Teams in November in 2019 to about 145 million in April of 2021. Talking about 16, 18 month period that it's grown 7-fold. It's just really amazing out there. And that's just the Teams app. That's not even adding the voice on it, but it's just a natural progression, right? People start to look at, well, what's kind of the next phase of Microsoft Teams that I could really start doing from a collaboration standpoint within my company. And it's just a natural progression to add on the voice component within Microsoft Teams. And what it does is it's really replacing your phone system, right? And it's replacing your phone system, giving you all the collaboration and audio conferencing tools that before you would have to have with disparate systems or multiple different vendors and systems to manage. It all kind of comes into one. But with that, there's a lot of different options for it. So we've kind of come up with what's the best way to educate customers on them. And they all have advantages. They all have limitations. But there's really kind of 4 different ways to do it. First is a customer could really just go directly to Microsoft. Now with that, there's a cost to what they call the calling plan. The cost on the calling plan can get kind of pricey. It's usually $12 for domestic, and then if you want to tag on international, it winds up being an additional $12. And the international piece means that if you want to receive or make calls internationally, you have to have that additional $12. So it immediately bumps it up to $24 per user. So it gets kind of pricey. The thing with it is that,
especially for those larger corporations that are going back and forth between their own international sites or if they're working with companies overseas.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. It makes a big difference, and it gets kind of pricey. So the other part of it is you're really kind of doing it yourself. Meaning that there's very little training. Everything is basically video training. Microsoft gives you very little support. It's more of a do-it-yourself type of setup. Even the porting part of it, you have to depend pretty much on doing it yourself. And then if you want to add any devices like paging or handsets or headsets, all that, you're pretty much out there scouring yourself to go see what's approved, what's not, how do I implement it, how do I order it. So just more to manage overall. So it works, but again, it does require a lot to do on yourself. And some customers feel comfortable with it, but the majority of them realize that that's probably not the most optimal way to go, especially with the limited amount of resources that IT organizations have nowadays. Which just makes a big difference.
Right, I was about to say that, like, if you have a dedicated, somewhat large IT group working for your company, that might be a little bit more reasonable, but for most people, that's completely out of the question.
It is, yeah, it really is. And then when you start to look at a design too, and this is what you call adding in a native direct routing partner. So these are organizations, which there's only a handful of them, probably about 5 to 7 or so, that are approved by Microsoft to actually connect their voice network into Office 365, which is connected into the phone system within Microsoft Teams. The good thing about that is that when you are using some of these native direct routing partners, like CallTower, what we do is we do the porting, we do the implementation, we provide you with live training. We're using the full Microsoft PBX stack. We're giving you 24/7 support. We're also giving you multiple different options in case of any interruptions on the Microsoft Teams application to make sure that your calls continue to complete and continue to communicate with your customers and your vendors. We give you the full device support, right? So whether you're looking at Poly or Yealink, devices or even some video room ready devices, we give you that support and we can provide you that equipment as well to help out customers. So it really becomes more of a hands-on approach. And in addition, we're giving you additional features that Microsoft is not going to give you. So different things like texting, CRM integration, contact center, requests for analog devices, like other devices besides paging, like door buzzers and fax machines and so forth. And we also give you that international presence. So whether you have one user in the UK or in Canada, or over in China, or you happen to have a big office, we're able to accommodate those other offices internationally and really tying it together. Even though Microsoft might not have a presence on there, with the CallTower network and the way that we work internationally, we have presence in roughly about 100 countries or 100 regions that we could get to, so that if you do happen to have a user in the UK, that call is going to stay within the UK if they're calling across the street, instead of it coming back to the US or going somewhere else out of country. We do give you the ability for it to stay. So you're kind of getting that full leverage of a PBX, Kade, that you wouldn't get users or even with Microsoft. And again, you're staying within the team's direct routing ecosystem overall.
Gotcha. Okay. And you can even have that, spread across the world, or just domestic.
Yep. And then the interesting part is when we're looking at the two other designs, right, is when you're looking at what they call a direct routing partner with third-party PBXs. This is where this is my passion. I love to really explain to customers and explain the difference. When they're not native, meaning it's a partner or competitor that says, yeah, we are a direct routing partner. That means, yes, they are connected into the Microsoft ecosystem, over to Azure and into the Teams client, but they're not using the core platform for the voice. They're not using Microsoft. So this is really not supported directly by Microsoft. That means that they're using a core platform from like a Cisco or their own proprietary, or formerly known as BroadSoft, or a NetSapiens or something like that, which is a back-end platform that they're plugging into Microsoft Teams. So, just think about what I'm saying. You're plugging in another device, another connection that adds layers of complexity, also adds layers of risk from a security standpoint, also from a voice degradation standpoint, from voice quality. And again, it's not supported by Microsoft. The other part of it too is that you have to make sure that plugin is compliant, whether it's PCI or HIPAA or even governmental compliance requirements. You have to make sure that it is. And if it's not, then you're not in compliance. It also adds another cost factor, right? Because now this third-party direct routing partner is having to cover that cost. So they're going to charge you either a premium or charge you a separate line item. And the real easy way, Kate, and this is probably the best thing to explain to any customer, if you find out or say, how do I know if this direct routing partner is native or not? If they're telling you to change your auto attendant in their port, not 365, that's the key. If they're also telling you to change your hunt groups, or what is referred to as a call queue nowadays, and you're going to their portal and not Office 365, then you know it's not native.
Not native, okay.
Yep, same thing with your voicemail too. So if your voicemail, they tell you, go retrieve your voicemail in a different portal, it's not native. So those are kind of the main three things. The other one too is if they tell you today that you could use any physical handset, so you could use any device, whether it's a Mitel or a Cisco or a Grandstream. If they're telling you could use any physical handset besides by Microsoft, then you know it's not native.
Gotcha. Well, and I can imagine if you're using a third-party system like that, a PBX like Cisco or BroadSoft, you could get some finger pointing. You could go to your provider and say, hey, I'm having issues. What's the deal? They'll say, oh, it's not us. It's these guys down the road.
Exactly. That's exactly right. It adds the more finger pointing. It does. And then when you start to look at the design 4, that's really, you get all the complexities of that design 3, but now you're getting the third party applications, which makes it more complex, right? So that means that you have an integration in between Microsoft Teams and this third party provider. They're usually not an expert in the Office 365 licensing. So they don't even know what's recommended for you, not just from a voice standpoint, but also just from an application standpoint. Do I need an E1, an E3, an F1 for my frontline workers, et cetera? There's no dialing from Outlook usually. Means that you have to use their soft phone and not the team soft phone to actually dial outbound. And you get also the limited native Teams features and functionality. It's just not all there. And again, complexity, risk, additional cost, security also becomes a concern overall. Not supported by Microsoft directly, so you have to be reliant or dependent on that third-party provider to give you that. It just gets clumsy. I mean, when I'm looking at my mobile device, I don't want to have to sit there and say, do I have to open up my Teams app or do I have to open up?
Right.
It's like I got enough things to worry about. That's the last thing I want to worry about.
Flipping through 8 apps just to get connected.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. Well, that's a fantastic breakdown of these 4 voice designs that we've kind of categorized on our own here, and the benefits of native and the complications that could come up with third party, and it might that system might work well for some people. Microsoft Direct might work well for some people, but we've found that our native solution has really has kind of that one stop feeling, like you have one person to talk to if something goes wrong. You have one billing cycle. You don't have to jump through all these procedural hoops just to get your stuff up and running. So that's a really great breakdown of all these available voice designs out there.
It really is. It really is. And, I appreciate the conversation on that. And hopefully that educated some of our customers and partners on some of the differences, and look forward to the next one. So thanks for having me on, Kate.
Perfect. Thank you, William, and thank you for all of you for listening with us today. We'll be back soon with a new episode, so stay tuned, and we'll see you next time on the CT Cloud Podcast.